Mick Jagger is more than the lead singer of the Rolling Stones. He is one of the most enduring cultural figures of the last century, a man whose energy, voice, and presence helped define rock and roll itself. For over 6 decades, he has moved across global stages with a confidence that seems untouched by time, transforming concerts into shared moments of history. Born Michael Philip Jagger in 1943, he grew from a young man with sharp ambition into a performer whose name alone evokes movement, rebellion, and sound. Yet as the years pass and the spotlight softens, attention has begun to shift away from the stage and toward a quieter but equally powerful question. What happens to a legacy built over a lifetime when its creator begins to think seriously about the future beyond himself? Fame, fortune, and a life lived loudly. The public knows Mick Jagger as the kinetic frontman who never slows down, the artist whose voice and strut became symbols of freedom and defiance. But behind that image is a man who has lived thoughtfully within the chaos of fame. His career was not a brief explosion followed by decline. It was a sustained ascent marked by adaptability, discipline, and an understanding of longevity few artists ever achieve. While many of his contemporaries faded, Jagger continued to evolve, balancing art with strategy and instinct with planning. The result was not just global fame, but a financial empire that mirrored his cultural influence, carefully built over decades rather than won through a single lucky moment. The scale of Mick Jagger's financial empire. Mick Jagger's estimated personal fortune has long been reported in the range of hundreds of millions of dollars, a figure shaped by constant touring, songwriting royalties, business ventures, film production, and real estate investments spread across several continents. The Rolling Stones themselves became one of the most financially successful touring acts in history, repeatedly selling out stadiums well into their later years. Unlike many artists who lost control of their work early on, Jagger maintained a strong grip on publishing rights and long-term revenue streams, ensuring that the music continued to generate income long after its initial release. His wealth was not accidental. It was built with intention, awareness, and remarkable consistency. Touring as a long-term strategy live performance was never just an artistic outlet for Jagger. It was also a powerful engine for sustainability. The Rolling Stones transformed touring into an art form and a business model, proving that age did not diminish demand when authenticity remained intact. Their tours generated hundreds of millions of dollars each, not because they relied on nostalgia alone, but because they delivered performances that felt alive and relevant. Even as the music industry changed, touring remained a cornerstone of Jagger's income, reinforcing his belief that staying active and connected to audiences was essential both creatively and financially. The power of an evergreen music catalog. At the heart of Mick Jagger's wealth lies the Rolling Stones music catalog, a collection of songs that have become woven into global culture. Tracks like Gimme Shelter, Angie, Paint It Black, and Start Me Up continue to earn through streaming, licensing, radio play, and film placements, not as relics of the past, but as living works of art. Jagger understood early on that ownership mattered, and he worked carefully to protect the long-term value of this catalog. While many artists have sold their publishing rights in recent years, Jagger has consistently indicated that preserving creative control and legacy outweighs the appeal of a single large payout. Real estate, art, and quiet investments beyond music, Jagger built a diverse portfolio that included high-value real estate in London, New York, the Caribbean, and Europe, many of which appreciated significantly over time. These properties were not symbols of excess, but calculated investments, some used privately, others leased or maintained as long-term assets. He also acquired art, historical memorabilia, and cultural artifacts connected to music and literature, forming a collection that reflects his interests rather than mere status. Together, these assets reinforced his financial stability and allowed him to think about wealth not as something fragile, but as something that could be directed with purpose. A different philosophy. About inheritance. As conversations around his later years began to surface, Mick Jagger surprised many by openly questioning the idea of passing enormous wealth directly to his children. Rather than embracing the traditional model of celebrity inheritance, he expressed a belief that large sums of unearned money can limit growth rather than support it. His now well-known comment that his children don't need hundreds of millions to live well was not dismissive, but philosophical, reflecting a long-held belief in independence and self-definition. For Jagger, legacy was never meant to be a simple financial transaction. It was a reflection of values shaped by experience, raising children outside the shadow of excess. Mick Jagger is the father of 8 children, spanning multiple generations and life stages. And while they grew up surrounded by opportunity, they were not raised to depend on inherited wealth. He consistently encouraged education, creative exploration, and professional independence, reinforcing the idea that identity should come from effort rather than entitlement. Many of his children pursued careers in music, art, fashion, film, and business, carving paths that reflected their own interests rather than relying on his name. This approach helped establish mutual understanding long before discussions about inheritance became public. Charity as an extension of responsibility. When Jagger began speaking openly about redirecting much of his fortune toward charitable causes, the conversation shifted from shock to reflection. His interest in philanthropy was not sudden or performative. It developed over years of global travel, exposure to inequality, and a deep understanding of how access to education and the arts can change lives. Rather than creating a single symbolic donation, he expressed interest in using his wealth to support meaningful, long-term initiatives that align with his values. In his view, money gained through a lifetime of global influence carried an obligation to give something back to the world that made it possible. Causes that reflect a life lived globally. Those close to Mick Jagger have suggested that the causes he cares most about are closely tied to his personal history. Music and arts education remain central, particularly for young people from communities with limited access to creative resources. He has also shown interest in cultural preservation, recognizing the importance of safeguarding artistic heritage for future generations. Global health initiatives, humanitarian efforts, and environmental protection have influenced his thinking as well, shaped by decades of witnessing both beauty and inequality across continents. These interests reveal a man looking outward rather than inward, as he considers the final chapters of his legacy. Family reactions rooted in emotion, not conflict. Despite sensational headlines, there is no credible indication that Jagger's family responded with anger or resentment to his views on inheritance. The emotional response described by those close to him was rooted not in loss, but in the gravity of realization. Estate planning represents time, change, and mortality, concepts that carry weight regardless of wealth. For his children and partner, the conversations surrounding his legacy were reminders that even figures who seem timeless eventually confront the same human boundaries as everyone else. The tears, when they came, were about transition, not money. A partner who understood the message. Jagger's longtime partner, former ballet dancer Melanie Hamrick, has been widely described as grounded and focused on family rather than status. Those familiar with the situation suggest she understood his intentions clearly and supported the broader philosophy behind them. Her primary concern has always been stability and well-being rather than control or accumulation, and she reportedly viewed Jagger's choices as a reflection of integrity rather than exclusion. For her, as for others close to him, the significance lay in the message he was choosing to leave behind. Legacy as a statement, not a sum. For Mick Jagger, legacy was never about numbers on a balance sheet. It was about impact, influence, and meaning. His music reshaped culture, his performances brought people together, and his longevity challenged assumptions about age and relevance. In choosing to prioritize charitable impact alongside family care, he framed legacy as something that extends beyond bloodlines. It was a way of saying that the world itself was part of his story, and that the success he enjoyed carried responsibility as well as privilege. A final act of independence. Throughout his life, Mick Jagger resisted easy categorization, and his approach to legacy reflects that same independence. He did not follow the expected script for rock stars, nor did he allow public pressure to dictate his values. Instead, he chose a path that balanced personal responsibility with global awareness, remaining true to the mindset that guided his career from the beginning. Even in moments of reflection, he remained unmistakably himself, thoughtful, challenging, and unwilling to do what was merely expected. The meaning behind the tears. Ultimately, the emotion surrounding Mick Jagger's legacy decisions was not about wealth being withheld or redirected. It was about witnessing a man consciously shape the final meaning of his life's work. For those who love him, that realization carried both pride and poignancy. It marked the transition from the unstoppable performer to the reflective elder statesman of rock, still leading, still challenging norms, and still thinking beyond himself. The tears were not about loss, but about understanding the weight of a choice made with clarity and conviction. A legacy that belongs to the world. Mick Jagger's story has always been larger than any single stage, album, or era, and his approach to legacy reinforces that truth. By choosing to see his fortune as a tool rather than a trophy, he extended the meaning of his success beyond personal or familial boundaries. His life reminds us that influence carries responsibility, and that the final statement of a career is not always written in sound or spectacle. Sometimes it is written quietly, through intention, values, and the courage to imagine a legacy that belongs not just to family, but to the world itself.